Television Facebook page and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. It is Tuesday, and as usual on this day of the week, we facilitate representatives of the National Democratic Congress. And this morning, I have General Secretary of the party, Glenn Noel, joining me virtually via our Skype platform. So I want to say good morning and welcome to Mr. Noel for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Good morning to the viewers and listeners. Thank you for having me. How are you keeping up?
I'm trying to stay COVID-free.
We all have to.
Amen. Speaking of...
It's really an unprecedented challenge for all of us.
Yes, it is indeed. And speaking of COVID-19, tell me some of the latest thoughts of the party as it relates to how government is dealing with this, the regulations that have been put in place, and possibly some of the concerns of the party as it relates to fighting this virus.
Well, just before we get into that, I want to use this opportunity to express condolences to the number of Grenadians who have died in the diaspora, both in the United States, in New York in particular, and in London, Grenadian families. We want to express our deepest condolences on behalf of the party and indeed on behalf of the whole of Grenada. We know what you're going through at this particular time, and it's a lonely time for families to be burying their loved one at this particular time. We also want to express some empathy with persons who have family members and loved ones who are affected by the coronavirus in the United States, in London, and everywhere. And of course, locally here. So I wanted to get that out of the way. And then thirdly, we want to also use this opportunity to recognize and to really pay homage to all our frontline workers, our emergency workers, our men and women in uniform, our health practitioners and care delivery persons. We really appreciate the sacrifice that you're making and the battle that you are fighting on behalf of all of us. And in fact, COVID-19 should teach us who are really important and who are really essential when it comes to preserving and saving lives. So I wanted to get that out of the way before we get into the other details. Let me just say that
sorry, Mr. Noel, before you go on, just lift up the phone a little bit. All we're seeing is under your chin, so just tilt it up.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, there we go.
Right. COVID-19 indeed presents a challenge for the whole world. That's why it's a global pandemic, and it has profound impact on our socio-economic order and indeed life itself. Everyone is moved, everyone is affected one way or the other. And so as we look at the figures and the numbers and we see almost 1.5 million persons are affected globally, and we see death getting close to 100,000 persons, we look at the region and we see as well the figure is growing. And therefore, this is something that all nations are battling with, all nations are engulfed with. And while there have been several epidemics in the past, and viral infection is not new, but this one is unprecedented for a number of reasons and factors. And so we are all grappling and coping. And I want to recognize the efforts that the government has made so far. It's a trial and error, and no one will have it perfect. Certainly there are things that we would have done better, but this is not a time for blaming. They are trying their best in the circumstances, and there are things they will get perfectly right, and there are others that is a learning experience. What I do know is that this is one disease that you cannot play catch up to. In order to win the battle, you have to lead from the front, and you actually have to be at the front of it. And so we applaud most of the efforts. Of course, there are some concerns that we have. Yesterday, I was privileged to see the long lines at the shopping centers and so. And while we are making the sacrifice, undoubtedly there is good and strong reason, scientific reason, for what we call physical distancing. I prefer to use that word than social distancing because I think that people need to be physically apart to distance themselves from each other. But we need to be socially connected because it's important for the human psyche generally. We have seen that there are still long lines and people have spent hours in the line, and in some cases very difficult to keep them 6 feet apart. So I've seen a lot of interaction where people are just rubbing into each other despite the best effort of the police force and the best effort of the owners of the business. So perhaps we need to review and to see if we need to come up with a different order that will avoid those public gatherings and people being so close to each other. And so maybe we can zone out the different parishes, people from different villages go on a particular day. We just have to try different things. But the authority, they're trying to come up with measures to the best of their ability. I've seen the long lines of farmers in particular who are looking for passes so that they can attend to the farms to save crops that may perish in the field, animals. Some people have expressed some concern that they need gas because they have irrigation system that need to pump water into the field. And certainly the issue of supplying food to the nation, these are some issues that we need to fine-tune as we go along, how to make it better so that everybody is a little bit more comfortable. A number of persons have complained that at this point in time, they have not received their salary, their check. It is a different stage in the bank, and they would like an opportunity to cash to have some money because some of them can't go and shop because they have no money and so forth. And so perhaps the financial sector, again, we understand why the measures are in place because money can be one of the sources where the virus can be transmitted and getting into lines in the bank and so, but they can look at some ways in which they can ease the burden for some of these people. So there are a number of measures and so. But I want to say this as it relates to asking and appealing to the public to support the measures, particular physical distancing. Because when one look at the coronavirus, and indeed any virus, a virus is not, it's a microscopic particle, not even what we can call an organism, because it's not really alive, right? It is there, piece of molecule, protein, substance, and so it needs a host, it needs a live cell, it needs a receptor in order for that to become alive. So it's almost like a zombie that just they frozen and resting and with a touch just awaken. And so if no one is in contact with the virus, even if it is resting on a surface, then it will die, after a number of days or hours or whatever it is. So there is good reason for the physical distancing in not giving it an opportunity to spread. So that is extremely important. Then I also want to use the opportunity to say to people that, listen, a lot of the theories that are circulating everywhere, including that is probably genetically manufactured, that is made in a lab, that the 5G may have something to do with it. These are just basic nonsense, right? So I don't want people to become complacent. I want them to take the science and the information seriously. Also, too, I would want to use this opportunity to say to people that all of the theories that are going around in terms of diet and nutrition and things that you can take and may prevent the virus from infecting you, I want to also say that is also false as well. The only way you could avoid getting the virus is by getting in contact with the virus. Of course, having a healthy immune system and eating properly will be able to give you some strength to protect yourself from from the worst effect of the virus as it relates to the signs and symptoms and coming down with pneumonia and some of the disease and so forth. That is why some people are healthy carriers, some people are affected worse than others. But these things would not prevent it in itself, but it's important to strengthen your immune system so that your immune system can fight off the viral infection. So I wanted to say something about those areas before we get into some other areas.
So, looking at what has been taking place here locally, you mentioned that you would give the government, praises for some areas, but not in all. What do you think they have done right in this instance?
Well, I think the courage to lock down the country. We may always debate on timing. I do believe that they could have restrict the issue of traffic coming into the country in terms of from our port of entry, because that is where you deal with the imported case. And if we look at the few cases that we have had, they came through at that particular point, and that could have been strengthened. But generally, the courage to take those decisions, and it's something we all battling with. And as you go, you have to fine tune. So most of the measures that they have taken, yes, there is room for improvement, but I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think that the minister, everybody else, is trying their best. They may have their own limitation based on the knowledge and the team. I also believe that they could have made a more genuine effort to involve the opposition. Yes, they have invited the opposition leader, Sister Franca Bonadin, to a meeting, the Prime Minister, and they have made some spaces for 3 members of our team to be part of the various subcommittees. I don't know if they have been called to any particular meeting as yet where they can have an input into what is happening. But I think at the national level, in terms of the national committee, that if you're talking about genuine participation and so, we could have been represented at that highest level where decisions are made. I think that they need to review how that is impacting on the ordinary man, the vulnerable people who are marginalized. Because even though you have shopping days and these people have no money and they live day to day just going to the shop to get what they have, it doesn't change the situation, and therefore special consideration has to be given to them at this point in time. Now, there is a debate about the issue of self-quarantine and mandatory quarantine. Let me just say that because I want to use this up. This is not an easy decision to make and to take, and there are disadvantages with mandatory quarantine that steps on human rights, and there are also issues of human behavior. In other words, if you ask me to report my symptoms or any condition that I have, if I have a cough or have a high fever, and I recognize that I may be taken away and forced into some central building, I may be reluctant to report to the authorities and so forth. So, there is advantages and disadvantages to everything. And this is not something that you just, do lightly like that. There are different stages for different things when it becomes necessary. I just wanted to add that because I know that is part of the debate. I know that, and I believe sincerely that the government did not attempt to deliberately make it difficult for the Seventh-day Adventists. I think they just look at the time span that they wanted to keep people away from the public, and when they think it's necessary to have another shopping day, it just happened inadvertently that the Adventist community, people feel that they were not sensitive enough to their needs. So maybe some more thought could be given to that as well in terms of the next move. So it's those little things as we go along. We see opportunity where the thing can be strengthened. But really and truly, what this call for is all of us collective effort, every single Grenadian, every single human being, because the COVID-19 has leveled the playing field. And it makes us look at who are really important to us. At the moment, you can be a politician, you can be a lawyer, and you still can move as you want to. You are restricted. And who are enforcing that? The ordinary policeman. The sanitary worker at this point in time perhaps is more important than you, because he's out there assisting and helping and being part of the front line. So perhaps we need to look at our values and our value system in terms of how we see people and give respect that is due to people. Because at this moment, nobody is interested in what is happening to the movie stars and the sports stars and what have you. The people that we are looking at, that we depend on at this moment, is our healthcare workers, our policemen and women in uniform. And I want to take this opportunity to also congratulate the policemen. I think that they are doing a good job. There will always be some odd situation where one or two policemen might be insensitive or a little bit abusive, and that is not enough to condemn the general effort that all the policemen are making. So you will always find something here and there, and I think that the commissioner, I'm sure that they're looking at it, and when it happens, they would talk to the officers and discipline them where it's necessary.
Remember,
I think it's body concern.
Remember to hold up the phone a little bit. Right. There has also been debate that the 2 weeks extension on the 24-hour curfew announced by the PM yesterday, some people are saying it's drastic, others are saying it is just fitting. What's your take, or the party's take, on the extension of the 24-hour curfew?
Listen, this time called for unusual decisions and drastic situation and shared sacrifice. And if the authorities, based on the information that they have, right, because what they're doing now is trying to flatten the curve, trying to curb and to ensure that the infection is contained within the persons who have been in contact with persons who have been infected. And what they're trying to do is to ensure that there is no public gathering and we are not giving an opportunity for the virus to continue spreading. And in the best of their knowledge, they think that is the best way to go. They may get one or two things right or wrong, but I support the measure. What has to take place, though, is to look at how it is impacting on different sections of the society and to see what other measures you can come up with to give people a little comfort, because you do not want to create unnecessary discomfort in terms of people becoming sick, people becoming hungry, people not being able to care for their loved ones. So I think no one has all the answer. And while it might be nice to think that there is a master solution out there, I think is a learning process for everybody. So I'm sure that they are reviewing the situation and circumstances. And if between now and the 20th, they see a hope that there too can be set aside for different activities for different people, then they would. I think they need to make the process a little bit easier for people who are caring for loved ones, for example, the shut-ins. There are some people who are attending to them to make sure that they have their meals, they have a bath, and, in terms of getting your pass and able to do that. So there's just some areas in which the committee need to sit down. And what we are hoping is that once the subcommittees are meeting, our representatives, Sister Ann John, Brother Kennedy Roberts, and Lennox Andrews, they would give their input at those levels, and all those measures hopefully will be taken into consideration. I think another aspect that we need to look at is that our socioeconomic order is found wanting. And post-COVID, we'll have to look at how we rebuild and how we create an economy that is more resilient, that certainly is more sustainable and more diversified. As we look at the impact, we look at the impact on the tourism sector, on the service sector, all of our hotels workers, taxi drivers, the whole question of trade, the government revenue at the port, because we as you know, we import most of our stuff and government depend on that for a lot of revenue and so. So we need to restructure our economy. We need to focus more on agriculture and food security and use the science and technology. We look at the education sector, and now we understand the importance of using the technology and the platform so that we can teach distance learning, that whole process. And I think that the whole job market will change a lot. People are learning now that there are a number of jobs that can be done at home, and it may change the nature of the labor force, perhaps to the benefit in some instances, and the issue of jobs and job security and so becomes, so there are a lot of challenges, there are a lot of issues that need to be analyzed and to look thoroughly. Let me just say that our party at this particular time is looking at the matter very seriously. We are doing the analysis, we are doing the study, and we have a vision of the way our economic and social order must be structured. When we look at our public health system, we also see many gaps in terms of providing universal healthcare coverage and making our healthcare facilities able to at least react and to be proactive and to be able to treat with all of the things that may come its way. Because, listen, tourism is an important aspect of our economy. Any minute we can have a cruise ship that come in with 20, 30, 40, 60 persons who are sick, a major accident. And you look at our emergency department, we look at the ICU department, we look at our ability really to respond to that. I also want to say that improving our testing capacity, the ability to do tests locally is a step in the right direction, because the more tests you do, you give yourself an opportunity to detect persons who are infected and a greater opportunity to contain and to curb the spread of the disease.
All right. You just mentioned, a matter of fact, the social economic aspect of it, and that the NDC is working on a study and so. Can you give us more details as to how you're carrying out that study, who's doing it, what you do with your findings, when you expect the findings?
Well, we are engaging a number of local, regional economists and political scientists, political economists, and so, who are looking at the figures as it relates to the direct impact, because you must be guided, your policy must be guided by data, by information. It is not far from what our overall vision is and what we have articulated as far as the way we believe the economy should be structured. The importance of, for example, agriculture, added value, agro-industry, the question of diversifying the tourism product to strengthen the actual product and so forth, the whole issue of internal trade. And so there are a number of things that we looking at, how to create an economy that is more resilient. Even when we look at agriculture, the whole question of using science and technology to increase the yield per acre, to be able to grow sustainable and resilient crops. For example, outside of COVID-19, we have the hurricane season, and we know there are some crops that are more vulnerable. What do you plant around that time to ensure that you have food? How do you deal with storage so that we could have in reserve? There's just a wide range of issues that we looking at, including all of the sectors. So there's going to be a short-term response, and there's going to be a long-term response as it relates to that.
Any idea when you would get the findings from the research?
We'll keep you certainly posted and keep the nation posted on the matter. Our party leader, Sister Franca Bernardine, would certainly make a couple of addresses during this period. And we also looking very closely. We know that at this particular moment with COVID-19, and we do not want to play politics, but we are critically aware that, for example, the results of the judicial matter between the government of Grenada and WRB, which has created a major financial situation. In other words, is the biggest ruling against the government of Grenada to the cost of over $200 million. And with the devastation of COVID as far as the economy is concerned, this is an additional burden on the backs of Grenadians. And the question have to be asked, how are we going to handle that? And how are we going to treat with that? And certainly at the right time, we'll talk about this matter. But we do not want to be insensitive when life and death and protecting life is the most important issue for us now. But it's something that we have to look at and look at the impact on the Grenada economy and on the taxpayers of this country indeed.
All right, let's take a break and come back inside. We're speaking with General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress, Glenn Noel. We're going to take a very quick break and come back inside with the discussion. This is To The Point on Classic Hot 98 and GBN.
Hi, this is Blaze. Be COVID smart and stay home.
Coughs and sneezes spread diseases. So cover coughs and sneezes, please. Not with a rag or bandana. They trap germs. When you use the rag again, you put germs on your hands and everything else you touch. When you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth and nose with tissue. Throw the tissue in a bin and wash your hands afterwards. If you don't have a tissue, cough into your sleeve or elbow. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers are also effective in cleaning hands.
As you panic buy amidst COVID-19, keep proper food storage tips in mind. Check expiration dates when shopping and place new items at the back of the cupboard and older ones in front, so you'll use the older items first. Keep dry food in a dry, cool, dark area and always keep your food covered. Pick up frozen items last when shopping and store first when you get home. Empty opened packages of sugar, dried fruits and nuts into screw-top jars or airtight cans to protect them from pests and losing freshness. Clean the top of stored cans and jars before opening. When shopping, avoid dented cans. Store your food items away from your cleaning items. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council as we battle COVID-19.
Feel good facts.
Help prevent cold and flu by washing your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. That's the time it takes to remove most germs. No soap and water? No worries when you've got alcohol-based hand sanitizer.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with General Secretary of the NDC, Glenn Noel. Mr. Noel, let's open the phone lines. As a matter of fact, 435-2041. The phones have been ringing for some time. Let's open the phone lines and see what we have on the other line. If we can please keep our comments, questions, queries, concerns to 1 minute or less. 2 minutes maximum. That would be greatly appreciated so we can facilitate as many questions as possible. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Blossom. How are you?
I'm good.
Morning, Mr. Glenn Noel. I just commenting on this congestion of the shoppers yesterday, where I see on the television news. Now, I have a suggestion. My suggestion is Andy, which is the proprietor hotspot, mobile, and station. Right? I'm suggesting that to curb the crowd being all over places to shop, if Andy could ask permission from the police to use the canteen area. Now, stock up the canteen area. If you have fridge on the generator, you could put the meat, right? And we're using people from the Botanical Garden roundabout end and the homemade end to enter 6 persons at a time. If you look at the gate, you will see there's 2 gates to enter canteen. And the exit will be on the Port Highway. And if this suggestion would go down well with Andy and the police, I think we would ease up some of the congestion along the Carronage and other supermarket area. It's only a suggestion to hotspot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am not sure if they are tuned in, so maybe you can call them and give the suggestion as well. Let's go back to the calls. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Go ahead, please.
Yes, yesterday, actually, I was listening to the program there, but only one significant thing, what was going on there, was a big problem there, was with going out and doing a slight of weekend work of different places. People had me on a brink day of doing it. I'm going out to go to do it, and that money can always come in, but we're not getting a part to play with that issue at all, because money have to come in to go do that work. But always you have to spend someone 3 hours to go and cut a yard or something like this. I'm not getting the information of it.
I'm sorry, what's your question? I'm having trouble hearing what you're saying.
I said I have a lot of jobs to do. I'm not getting significant part to play to go and do my jobs.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
No, but listen, I'm not much, but I was speaking about it on halfway with the funeral agency, because my mom died, and up to now they're not burying her yet, and I simply can't see it's time for people to bury her, and nobody's not pushing, the government is not pushing for that part to play to bury her as yet.
Okay, thank you, caller. As far as I'm aware, the funeral agencies have been told. I shouldn't say have been told. Funeral services have been put on hold during this time. There was a regulation in place for there to be 10 mourners per funeral, but a lot of people have been breaking that rule. And I believe that is one of the reasons why they've decided to stop it completely, because, once again, Grenadians, some people make the way bad for others. So maybe after 2 weeks, we'll see what would take place. Any comments, Mr. Noel?
Well, let me thank the 2 callers. And obviously, these are matters that have to be reviewed. I think for example, if you hold up the burial of persons, then the funeral homes may have too many persons, and they too may have a problem with space for over an extended period of time. So there would have to be a review to look at measures and so on. As I said before, it's really a terrible time for family members to be burying the dead, feeling lonely, not able to have the support of the public. But it's all in the public good as it relates to the issue of physical distancing. I hope that there are measures in place where the funeral homes, like everybody else, can give ordinary and poor people in particular some reduction on the price of burial during this particular period. But I think that the matter needs to be looked at by the authorities and to see what measure they can come up with and how they will address that. The previous caller, I think, is a good suggestion, something that can be looked into. As I say, no suggestion at this moment should be viewed as not making sense. The pros and cons of everything must be taken on the table. And I'm sure after that, the whole question of buying on the net and having things delivered at homes, one of the things that supermarket can look at is to expand that service so that a lot of the things can drop off. And maybe in the future, you might see drones just going through communities and dropping based on order that is being, that people make. So we certainly need to find ways to avoid the large gatherings and people remaining hours in the line. And in particular, being able to replenish the supply of the major grocery stores. Because what I've discovered yesterday, for example, the Marketing Board, they opened at 9 and they were waiting all up to 10 for supplies. So people were going inside, there was nothing really to be had. And most of the supermarket that I heard about in Grenville, people were able to get some stuff, but they were still short on a lot of basic items like cheese and a whole lot of stuff. And people were complaining that they were not getting all the things that they need. So we need to look at the distribution and supply chain. Maybe another day when the distributors can go to the place, not at the same day when people are shopping, and deliver. And as I said before, I think is work in progress, and we just have to review every day. I imagine that's what the National Task Force is doing, that every single day they are reviewing all of the issues and trying to come up with ways to make things much easier and much better for everybody.
The RGPF highlighted, the Acting Commissioner Edwin Martin highlighted yesterday that this is something that they're looking into in terms of the delivery trucks and when they're going out to restock supermarket and shops shelves. So that should be hopefully take effect and should be in place by the next shopping day, which is this Saturday. We have another caller on the line. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, good morning, Blossom and Mr. Noel. Mr. Noel, I want to give you 99.9% for the way you speak this morning. But my concern is when they have these lines, I think they should have a line for the elders. Because, listen, a lot of people have problems with pressure and things. And people have to stand up in the sun for all this time. There is something they must really, really, really look at. Because people could drop down. And the other thing is, I would like to know if there is anything in place for, like, people that don't have, if they have any way that people dropping out, like a box of food or some provision, something for them to cook in the social service. If the social service have anything, providing things for the people, and not only for their people, but for the people, like people that eat, because you really have some people that don't have. Because look at yesterday, I heard somebody call on the radio and say they don't have money to go out and shop and to buy nothing. And then if you have your money in the bank and you don't have a card, I think that's the worst part. You can't get your own money and you still have to stay there and suffer. I think they must put something in place.
All right.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Mr. Noel?
Yes, well, thank you very much, caller. Certainly, one of the problems you always have in any situation like that is the issue of enforcement. Because even when there are consideration, your ability to enforce it and to ensure it happens as planned is a challenge. I know that they did announce that the first 2 hours, I can't remember what the exact timing, should have been for elderly persons and persons with differently abled. Whether that is being adhered to and how that is policed, that is a different issue. So perhaps they need to review that and to actually ensure that indeed the elderly person are given an opportunity, or to come up with different measures to ensure that it is done. Maybe people can be engaged who can do those shopping, for elderly persons and have a drop-off point or drop it at home. So we just need to be creative and innovative as we move along the way. And also, too, I think that the government will have to review whatever relief effort that they have if this matter remain like that for a long time as it relates to ensuring that people are supplied with the basic items, those people who are unable and vulnerable. It calls certainly for all of us, organizations, the private sector, public sector, the NDC as a party. We have launched what we call the NDC Care Initiative, where we are encouraging our caretakers and our constituency leaders. I know that our party leader, Sister Franca Bernardine, have been engaged in dropping off some stuff. I have been dropping off some stuff for neighbors too, some provision, vegetables, whatever I can find. And we need to put a system in place, identify those persons who are most vulnerable and able to meet those needs. There are people who have been doing it. For example, Sister Marcel Belma, I want to single her out and to congratulate her. And there are certainly a number of other persons who I may not know of. I found that a lot of the farmers yesterday were very generous in the prices that they have. Of course, they're trying to avoid spoilage and waste, but they too have been selling at a very reasonable price and to people. So, you know, what it is calling for is for us to be our brother's keeper and to really look out for each other and to come up with whatever we can. And I want the authorities to bear in mind too and to give certain incentives for organizations and persons who want to volunteer and able to help. Also, bearing in mind that while you do all of that, people still need to follow the protocols. They still need to deal with the issue of the hygiene protocol as far as washing your hands and sanitizing in your homes and everywhere, and that people still need to keep the 6 feet apart and so.
There are questions on the Facebook. One of them asks it not really to deal with coronavirus, with COVID-19, but it asks, what will happen if Mr. Tobias Clement is the official opposition leader of Grenada? Where will that leave the NDC and the party leader? Yes, where will that leave the NDC and the party leader?
Well, what you have is one more partner in the struggle to broaden democracy and to have other voices and to have another opposition voice. He will become the official opposition leader, but NDC still has a base of over 20-something thousand persons and over 40% of the electorate, and therefore we will continue to speak on behalf of them and to do whatever we can, but we are certainly open and willing to collaborate with any individual, organizations, or group that have Grenada at heart and want to work for the development of Grenada and want to provide an opportunity to broaden the democratic process and to hold the government accountable. And so this is not a threat or a problem to us at all. If he becomes the opposition leader, he have an opportunity to determine who would be at the level of the Senate. And if he wants our people to continue serving, we are open to that. If he wants to change, that is his prerogative and option. We certainly will find other platforms to continue to struggle on behalf of the Grenadian people. So it may just be that there is now another opposition voice in the lower house so that the right questions can be asked when Parliament meets as it relates to the development of the country. And we are willing to walk along and to support. We do not see him as an enemy nor a threat.
There's another question. We heard that of the 3 people on the different organizations, Kennedy Roberts, Lennox Andrew, and John, why are we not seeing a member or 2 in the briefings with the administration giving their 2 cents?
Well, as I said earlier, that it is one area we felt that at the national level, perhaps a member should have been involved at that level. And certainly at the committee level, let's hope that along the way, they will find ways to incorporate and it will have been a good opportunity to have the voice of the opposition, not just at the subcommittee level, but at the national level, and being able to, alongside the government, speak to the issues. But this is not something that we have a choice over. People do things differently.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning.
Good morning, Boss Woman. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
All right. Good morning to you, Mr. Robert. Is Glenn, right?
Noel, yes.
Noel, yes. I just want to make a suggestion because in agreement with many of the things that Mr. Glenn would have been commenting on. However, I had an experience yesterday, and I just wanted to add my voice to let the nation know that decision that was taken to to send the whole of Grenada outside for food yesterday. Although it's, Mr. Glenn said, it's a try and error thing. But from what I saw yesterday, I don't think we should have an experience like that yesterday. Again, and let me explain why. And I'm talking specifically for real value. I was real value at 7:15 yesterday, and I didn't leave there until about 1:45. Yeah, I'm young and strong. I'm able to take the shift in. Yes, the protocol was in place, the 2 hours for the senior citizen, but the amount of senior citizens that was at that place yesterday, there was no way that 2 hours was sufficient for them. Yeah? So in my quest, I just want to suggest going forward that if the authorities could look into it and make a specific day for senior citizens, because I didn't think it was fair yesterday for they competing with so many of us yesterday. I mean, it was a chaotic situation. As much as the police was trying to put it in order, but people were there for so long, after a while they get frustrated, and people were just getting agitated, you know, and I could understand that procedure. But I'm just saying, going forward, if the authority could look into a situation where they could make a special day for senior citizens only to go out, I think this would be a very accommodated thing to do. The other thing I noticed too, just let me make that one quick, the essential workers, I think many of them took advantage of that pass yesterday, because there were so many of them that came in the short pants and in the slipper and the tin straps to shop. And they were using that as an opportunity to get in there before the rest of the people. Because in my view, I thought essential workers were people who may be coming from work, have a uniform, or going to work, and that time was given to them to just speed up the process. And I have no problem with that. But when people at home and they come in to shop casually and using that, I think that is what messed up the whole situation yesterday when these type of people came in and were trying to get in there before everybody else. I think that is where the system fell down. So I just wanted to comment that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Noel?
And that is good. What we need is to have people coming up with the suggestions and to encourage that kind of dialogue and debate, because no one has, you know, a monopoly on all the good ideas. Certainly, as I've said from the onset, that it is problematic because you're trying to keep people inside, and then when you open the floodgate on any particular day, you have a number of persons who the lines are just too long. And as I said yesterday, I myself observed that it's very difficult to keep people 6 feet apart, and that yes, you have the vulnerable persons, and maybe we need to put everything on the table and see what is the best thing we can come up with to avoid those congestion. So whether it means a special day for the elderly, whether it means that we probably need to have certain villages come out on a particular day and shop so that there is not too many persons at one time in any gathering. And in that way you might, because one of the consideration in containing too, you want to ensure that you kind of know where people are from and coming from, so that if, for example, somebody moved from St. David's to Grenville, it becomes very difficult sometimes to determine the source of the infection and everything. And that is why they want to keep people within a locality, because it makes it a little bit easier. So perhaps if you come up with different villages at one time, some people suggest names in alphabetic order, that will be very difficult and complex to pull, because if I say my name starting and end, and you have to show ID, all that will create some problem. No, I think some special consideration should be given to the emergency workers, be it a special time, have other persons able to do the shopping or whatever it is for them, because while they are there on the front line every day, they have needs just like everybody else. And it may very well be that the shopping time is when they have to work. But I certainly understand what the caller is saying, that if you're not working at the time and you come in and try to use that, you know, advantage, but perhaps the person also have, they may come in and they have a 1 o'clock shift, and they're looking to get some stuff to dress and go to work at 1. So it's a complex situation, and we just have to evaluate as we go along and try to improve. Once the authorities have an open mind and they are listening and they are paying attention to the gaps and the irregularities, that is what is needed at this point in time, and to seek to address each of the problem, each of the issue as they come to life. I wanted to say this as it relates to contact tracing.
Before you, right? Sorry, Mr. Noel, before you go on, I just wanted to also lend my thoughts on the previous caller. As the Acting Commissioner of Police, Edwin Martin, said in the news conference yesterday, observing what happened during extended shopping hours yesterday, adjustments would be made to the arrangements. So it was a learning experience for them, and they would put measures in place for the next shopping day to facilitate all these concerns. There are supermarkets who facilitated seniors in specific lines. I recall seeing senior citizens in the lines for essential workers as well, so they were not jostling with the members of the other population. So arrangements have been made to handle senior citizens. As it relates to essential services, I'm not saying that there weren't people who probably took advantage of the opportunity, but I don't think it's fair to say they are dressed casually, so they are abusing their powers. Like Mr. Noel just said, that person is probably shopping to go to work for 1 or 3 o'clock, or even 7 o'clock, or they just come off their shift, which ended at 6 a.m., change their clothes and come back in the line. So we are not always, and I'm saying we are not always dressed in uniform. It could have been a nurse in her tin strap top, just come from the maternity ward or heading back to gynae ward. So we can't just see people and assume that they're taking advantage of the opportunity. We don't know people's situations, and essential work is not an 8 to 4 job. It could be at any moment. For me, I could be in the line yesterday and you get a call that something needs to happen and I need to come out of the line and go do what I do, which is why the arrangements are made to facilitate essential workers with the quickness so they can get in and out just in case they have to run back to do what they have to do. I just thought I should share that. Yes, Mr. Noel, you were saying something about contact tracing.
Yeah, I was saying that this is an area I would want the government to step up, because this is so critical in flattening the curve, able to identify persons who have been exposed to the virus or persons who are infected with the virus, and able to do the surveillance and monitor the day-to-day activities. We have heard the health authorities and the Commissioner of Police express some concerns about those who have abused the self-quarantine situation, and we need to improve that. We don't have the technology. Some countries, they install a sort of alarm warning bracelet, so as soon as you enter the outside of the house, it alarms and signal to the authority. Some people consider putting an app on the phone, so as soon as you step out. But it calls for self-discipline and conscientiousness, but it also calls for setting up a thorough monitoring system. I know a lot of other persons who have been involved, even retired public health inspectors and people who have been in that, who understand what it is to follow up and to do contact tracing. You can give a number of persons the numbers of such persons, and they call and check and see what they're doing, apart from the police who is paying particular attention. I know people are concerned about people going back home, but it's one of the measures that is sometimes necessary before we get to the stage of mandatory quarantine people in any public facility. That is also part of the process. You just have to find a combination and an integrated approach and treat on a case-to-case and look at every family situation, because you may have cases where it's very difficult to exercise any physical distancing in small households where people, 5, 6, 7 persons in one small 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom house, and you don't want to create an opportunity for further infection. So you kind of need to review and to take the appropriate measure based on the situation.
All right, Mr. Noel, it's just about time for us to wrap up the program. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, certainly, I would like to say that at the psychosocial level, families have to find creative ways of coping and staying together. There are things you can do with your kids. I mean, a lot of the young people today, they don't know some of the old-time game like marbles and hodgepodge and top and all those kind of things you can do together. Read a book, have fun with your children. Take care of your parents and elderly. Find some comfort as you have the time now to review a lot of things that you have not done. I hope that people who have strained relationship, they can spend some time and talk to each other and to rebuild. And that those where they have tension, that we find ways to manage whatever conflict that exists. But the coronavirus is really one that has that global impact and touches all aspects of our life. And I want to use this opportunity to congratulate the Grenadian public, because I think in a general sense, people have done their best in trying to cope with the situation. The policemen, the authorities, and everybody out there is a soldier in this fight. And let's hope, let's pray, but let's do the right thing to stay healthy, protect our loved ones, protect our lives, and hope that we will see an end sooner than later to this really global pandemic that has affected all of us in so many ways.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Noel, for speaking with us. You continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and stay COVID-free.
Thank you, and same to you too.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Give your mom my regards.
I shall do that. I'm sure she's tuned in, but I shall pass on just in case. Have a good one.
Same to you.
And that's the end of the program. I want to once again thank the NDC General Secretary Glenn Noel for chatting with us this morning as we continue to work and operate under the new dispensation as a result of coronavirus COVID-19. Thank you to those of you who posed your questions, queries, comments, concerns on the various platforms. Appreciate it as always. This is GBN Hot and Classic FM. Stick and stay. It's 1 minute after the hour of 10. That's the end of my time today. Have yourselves a productive Tuesday. The homeschooling program is up next. It's a repeat broadcast, which means it was live a few weeks, maybe last week. So you are not able to phone in and answer the questions that are on the program. So please, parents and children, refrain from calling in. This is pre-recorded. It's a repeat program. Have yourselves a productive Tuesday. Be safe. Continue to do what you need to do to stay COVID-free. Have a good one, everybody.